Hello, and welcome back. We're going to discuss the first stage of cellular respiration, aerobic cellular respiration. We're going to go over the process of glycolysis. So essentially what glycolysis is the splitting of our sugar. And the way your book depicts this, it uses little balls to represent the carbons. So this would be a carbon here, 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 here. Okay, we've got 6 carbons. I'm not going to draw in the hydrogen and the oxygen on our glucose molecule, okay? But that's essentially what those little balls represent. They represent our carbon molecules. And then what we have with glycolysis, and your textbook outlines this nicely as far as the series of steps, all right? That are going to happen in the splitting of that 6 carbon sugar into 2 3 carbon sugars. So now we've got 3 carbons, but we've got 2 of them. All right, those 3 carbons, then this is now going to be our pyruvate or our pyruvic acid, okay? And what's going to happen kind of in that process, all right? We're going to split the chemical bonds here, and there are a ton of intermediate products and a ton of intermediate enzymes in this diagram in your textbook. Don't worry about memorizing those, all right? What I want you to know with glycolysis is we're splitting the sugar. We're going from 6 carbons to 3 carbons. The 3 carbon molecule we're generating is pyruvate, okay? And what's going to happen in that process, that's going to be 6 there, okay? We've got our chemical reactions that are going to happen to generate our pyruvate. There we go, okay? There are going to be a couple things that are going to happen, okay? In the process of the series of steps here, we are going to have to input 2 ATP. So we've got to put 2 ATP into this process to split glucose into pyruvate. All right, I guess I should write this under here, glucose. All right, what we get out at the end, we get our 3 carbon sugars, or 3 carbon molecules, the pyruvate, plus we're going to get 4 ATP, okay? But remember, we had to put 2 ATP in, so our net ATP is going to be 2, okay? So the total ATP we generate out of glycolysis is going to be 2, all right? So that's one of the products I want you to know associated with glycolysis. I want you to know the pyruvate, I want you to know the ATP, and then I'm going to use this diagram over here to show you the other molecules that we get out of this. Because essentially in this series of steps that happens, in addition to generating ATP, we are also going to collect some electrons, all right? And those electrons are going to be needed for our electron transport chain later in cellular respiration, okay? But we're going to collect some electrons there, and the way we're going to collect them is via an enzyme, okay? And this is going to be the enzyme I want you to know, okay? NAD stands for nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, okay? So nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. NAD is shorter, easier to say. NAD is fine, okay? So what we're going to generate then out of this, those electrons are going to be carried by NAD, at which point our NAD becomes NADH, okay? Because the hydrogen there is where we're following those electrons, okay? So the NAD is going to accept the electrons out of this process and become NADH. The NADH is going to become important later in cellular respiration because the NADH is then going to donate those electrons to the electron transport chain to generate the bulk of our ATP. All right? So total products we want to get out of this: 2 pyruvate molecules net of 2 ATP, all right? And 2 NADH are what come out of glycolysis. All right? Second part that I want you to understand what's going on, we're going to convert our pyruvate into something else, okay? And that something else, again with the squeakiness, sorry, is going to be a 2-carbon molecule with, and I'm going to draw this in a different color, something attached to it. And that something attached is called acetyl-CoA. The CoA stands for coenzyme A. I'm fine if you just refer to it as acetyl-CoA. Okay? So this is going to be an intermediate step between glycolysis and our Krebs cycle, because it's going to be the acetyl-CoA. The way I think about this is that acetyl-CoA kind of primes our Krebs cycle. So it's going to get a kind of the molecule that's going to kickstart the Krebs cycle going. All right? And again, with pyruvate being converted to acetyl-CoA, there are going to be some products I want you to be aware of. All right? Again, we're going to have for each molecule, we're going to have an NAD that's going to give us an NADH. All right? Now keep in mind, you'll end up with 2 NADH out of this process because we've got 2 pyruvates here. Okay? So each pyruvate molecule is going to be converted into an acetyl-CoA. Okay? So we've got 2 of these to start with, 2, 2, and we're going to end up with 2 of these at the end. Okay? Start with 2 pyruvate molecules, 2 NADH, again going to extract those electrons, carry those electrons as NADH. We're going to end up at the end with acetyl-CoA. All right? Now we got something else that happens here because we're lopping off one of our carbons, and that has to go somewhere. Okay? And where that goes to, this is now where some of our carbon dioxide in the process of aerobic cellular respiration is generated, okay? So we lose that carbon molecule in the form of carbon dioxide, all right? So in the conversion of pyruvate to acetyl-CoA, the products that we're going to end up with out of that are going to be 2 NADH molecules, so that's going to carry our electrons. 2 acetyl-CoA molecules, this is going to be what primes our citric acid cycle. And we're also going to end up with, ultimately, because you've got 2 that go through this, we'll end up with 2 carbon dioxide out of that process. Okay? Keep in mind, the NADH is there essentially to carry or hold electrons. And the way it carries or holds that electron is in the form of NADH. Okay? So this is going to be the enzyme that I want you to know that's associated with glycolysis. There are some others in there that are important as well, but for what we're doing here at this level, this is what I want you to know. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions, please let me know.